Alright, folks, welcome back. 皆さん、お帰りなさい。今日は、33日目です。Is day 33. Wrapping up finally doing our Duolingo Chinese review later today. So, gotta keep on pace, be a little efficient. We're post level up, so post level up tends to have a double stack. Not pretty manageable. 100 plus. I think it looks like Tuesday might be a cycle back to something as well. Anyways, we got a bunch of radicals. I think all the radicals were fine, and then we have a few special cases yesterday that let's go over them before we start our review. Right. So for this one, we're supposed to think of piety. So then say humbly. And to get the humbly, you're mowing someone's lawn, right? That's what they're trying to do. Mow. Okay. And that would be an O. Then we want to make sure the kanji ones are checked off first. Prioritize those. And then this one is the drop reflection. So drop reflection of treasure in the king's house or home. Oh. Okay, then we have some special cases. These are typos. So da, right? Dori. I'm pretty sure I wrote hitori. And then this one I jumped the gun. So plant is the mnemonic, and kit. Okay, then we have specials, right? So this is a special, kokoro. Interestingly enough, my little discussion near the end about Attack on Titan, it's good enough. Like Shinzo, right, and Kokoro. Then these are special cases too, right? So this is dealing with a mnemonic fresh. Well, I guess fresh is also the definition. Fresh, live, raw. Largely fresh. Fresh works. And nama, right? Nama. Nama biru, right? Okay, and then these two special cases as well, right? Because double reads, and a modified read, but it's actually the same read, but one is modified. So this is for a write letter or letters. I think those were acceptable. Write letter from now on. And Mo teaches us the letters. So Moji. And for this one, it's Mon. I'm pretty sure this was a convergence, but we have whatever letter, right? Quote unquote letter, I suppose. Letter that is a straight line here. And only monsters write straight lines. That's right. Mon. Ne? So, ichimonji, right? Ichimonji. Okay. Those are our mistakes from last time. There are some weaker ones. We'll see if they crop up or not. and then we'll elaborate on them or not. We're giving it a second day. Reinforce. I didn't add anything to any of these yet. Let's hop into our review. Reviews. Oh, there, Vang. I'm doing pretty well. Just started for the day. How are you? How are you? Okay, good to hear. Good to hear. What have you been up to since the last time we spoke? You just want one. You just want 100. Okay. I see. You've been lately tomorrow, but now you've got vacation for 2 weeks. Nice. What are you gonna do with the 2 weeks? I'm still trying my best at Japanese. Yeah, you can say that. Yeah. Thanks. Long ways to go. Long ways to go. It's a skill for life, for sure. Hope someday we'll see you in Yakuza. It's soon. It's in less than... It's 2 days from now. We're probably gonna play the Chinese playthrough and the Japanese playthrough of Infinite Wealth. Hopefully to complete it before Yakuza Pirates. Pirate Yakuza is on the 21st of this month. The timing hasn't changed at all. So like patience, I suppose. Patience is a virtue, after all. Like the time hasn't changed at all. And the release date didn't move up or get delayed. All according to plan. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well, Gecko. Thanks for dropping by. How are you? Oops. You have any plans on doing some language learning, Vang? Wait, actually, are you... I was gonna ask about Korean, but I don't remember what the status is on your interest in language learning, Vang. Doing good too. You just made me think that I'm soon going to be playing Civilization 7 and that I might want to try to set up the UI to JP to try it out. Ooh, that's a lot of technical information. Yeah. Maybe like in another 2 years, Gecko? 2 years? I might do a expanse game, like a 4X and or a grand strategy game. Ooh, you can see that will be reinforcing both Chinese and Japanese really, really hard. because anything dealing with advanced like politics, spiritualism, and like warfare and whatnot, they overlap dramatically. The Mandarin and Japanese. Another 2 years though. I wouldn't mind playing Civilization 7 with English, and maybe like try to explain things in Japanese while I'm reading the English or something. Yesterday when I was doing Hansa Hero, I found that I've understand enough vocabulary, and Chinese does this thing where you can kind of feel like you can make up words over time, and that's something I don't feel about Japanese at the moment, obviously. However, in Chinese, it's kind of fun trying to brainstorm like what kind of characters you can combine to express something that maybe have not been expressed very frequently. Kind of fun doing that type of experiment. Like, what would you call a keyboard, right? I would put in, like, for example, for WaniKani, probably like nuroku, and anything that deals with a board. But I don't have a word for board yet, so maybe I'll do mokururoku, wood input. Like a wood board or something. But you know, that's kind of the thing that I've been playing around for a while. It's like, well, I don't know what I don't know what a television, I don't know what a monitor is, instead of saying monita, you could say like, let's see, you could put akarui dien, and then screen, right? You know, but unfortunately I don't know a word for screen either. Japanese for you seems like kind of difficult. What about Korean? You I remember you expressed your affection for Korean. I did sort of briefly met a person who was interested in Korean yesterday, although that was kind of one of those 9 out of 10 situations where that person basically said something, I respond to it, ask another thing, and they continue to respond the thing that they want to say without giving me an indication that they were actually listening to my questions or not. So, and then the person disappeared. You're already planning to play in English even though it's also available in French. True. Your French was pretty impressive yesterday. I think once you learn the core mechanics, I'll try it out in JP. I don't know yet how enriching that'll be. Yeah. That's kind of my take on things, right, Gecko? I'm sure if I can definitely see you saying very similar things frequently if you're sharing your experience, right? So one thing that often comes up is things are taken out of space and time, and you're often also taking a gamble at how people perceive your competence, right, or your comprehension. And for me, I don't flex into incomprehensible territory very much. So like, I don't want to give people the false impression that February is the month of Like a Dragon, but I'm not like, the first comment I can probably see is someone's like, why don't you play with Japanese subtitle in a Japanese UI hub? And I'm like, that's because it's borderline pushing incomprehensibility, right? There's a dance that you do around the barriers of your comprehension. So like, I would love to jump at the deep end, but generally speaking, for me, it's about trying to take a steady pace towards things. So when you said you want to learn the core mechanics and then try out the JP, yeah, me too. So like, this coming year, it's not like I'm gonna be all like oh no, you know, suddenly it's like, oh yeah, this guy is not going, this guy isn't like Japanese only stream of Japanese, the Japanese copy of Like a Dragon. It's like, yeah, of course not. So I hope no one's getting that impression. And also Yakuza Pirates, the new game, is going to be played in English first, and it's the English cast, of which I will still probably get comments about, dude, the Japanese cast is better. It's like, yeah, why not both? And there is also another big asterisk. There's another big asterisk. I won't be playing Yakuza Pirates in Chinese or Japanese until the next game, right? Infinite Wealth was paused until this coming game. So now I'm playing Infinite Wealth with as much time as I had between its launch and its completion. And then Yakuza Pirates is going to be the same, very similar. It's going to be at a later date for the Chinese and Japanese because it gives me time to boost my comprehension, right? So it will be played in English. However, Infinite Wealth is going to be played in the Chinese dub and the Japanese dub. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to mark that, because oftentimes when you title your videos with Japanese or Chinese, it's all or none the way people interpret English most of the time. Like if you say it's Japanese, then they're going to expect like a Japanese person reading Japanese and listening to Japanese dub a lot of times. Like it's kind of a interesting thing, but you know. By the way, thank you for giving you VIP. I appreciate it. Yeah, you asked for it, right? Hello there, Procall. Welcome. It's going pretty well. We have some conversations early today. We got an earlier start as well. My webcam, it's a C920. Is that what they're called? It's the same it's the same webcam that I had that Logitech continues to print up till now. Yeah, it's the C920. Ah, that still sells for, dang, that stuff still sells for $70. Yeah, it's the original C920 from 15. Has it been 15 years? No, it hasn't been 15 years. 10 years ago? Yeah, 10 years ago. What I can honestly say about the combination of feed compression and lighting. So it's largely lighting. When you have lighting, as long as you have proper lighting, there's a trade-off for lighting, right? A nice camera with a larger sensor. I'm only going to be talking about the pragmatic side of things. I don't want to go into any technicals because I'm not I don't have technical knowledge of this. However, the one thing that when it comes to streaming that is practical is that acquiring more advanced cameras with larger sensors allowed you to have lower light situations, and that lower light situations may reduce fatigue for the eyes. So this cam has served me pretty well, and I recently acquired a larger diffused light source. So now I don't have like a solid beam of light slamming into my eyes, right? However, if you don't have a particular tolerance in your eyes for specific light sources hitting you in the face, right? Other cameras, now they actually equip camera. You can also attach a SLR camera to whatever that has a larger sensor. Oftentimes it alleviates the light. So definitely the light, and it has been a workhorse. Like it's kind of like my mic, right? My mic is almost as old as my cam, and my mic is the AT2020, which I think they make a updated version of that. They also make an updated version of C920. So not too much. It's the first things that you probably find on a budget list. No, this is the Audio Technica AT2020. Yeah. From, I don't know how old this is. The first launch was probably over 2 decades ago, but this is 10 years old. Yeah. Yeah, I think Tofugu explained it pretty well in one of their articles. According to them, as far as learning goes, you usually want to aim for 80% known concepts, vocabulary, and 20% exposure to new things. Yeah, the 80-20 rule, which is more prominently as a economics principle, and I use the 80-20 rule as well, which I brought it up a couple of times already. 80-20 is how I split my study and learning practice. Actually, I think I might have alluded to 80-20 rule yesterday, about how I interact with anime. 20% of the time is possible learning or marking down what I don't know and want to learn, and 80% of the time is practicing. And then when I'm learning here, I want to feel like I'm 80% of the time being exposed to new things while practicing 20% of the time. Unfortunately, this is not the case for SRS. SRS is like 80% on lesson days, like, you know, WaniKani's thing, 80% on lesson days. And then the review days are more like 80-20 the other way. So I'm perfectly all right with that because SRS does that. So on those days, I try to do something else, right? So yesterday was a review day. Today's a review day. So I'm doing Duolingo, which deals with another aspect that isn't the Japanese recall aspect. So I tend to try to keep it in that realm of things. And I play it safer. I do 90-10. So 90-10 when it comes to consistency. So if I tank, the lower end is 80-20. The higher end is near complete comprehension. Then I rope in a different skill set if I'm already comprehending everything. So for review these days, I bring in something else that I'm working on as opposed to clearly reviewing most of the time. Well, thanks for the vote of confidence, Vang. When it comes to viewership, Vang, I haven't made any attempts to change the format that would accommodate something like that. Naturally, I would probably select it down to like 1 or 2, like in the teens at most. How do you choose which of the 2 options to be taken up 80% of the time and which should take up 20% of the time? As long as it doesn't cause me to, this is more of an intuition thing for yourself. The 80-20 is I hold it as long as I can stay motivated for it. I conclude for myself that learning capacity requires most of my energy. So I do 80-20 for learning to practice as long as I can sustain it. So for me right now, it's about 6 hours a day. And then the rest of the day, which technically is about, how long do I stay up? I guess I stay up for another 12 hours, so 18 hours a day, right? Another 12 hours would be practice in various things. The alternative is, how do I determine it, is to do a skill set sufficiently long enough in which I no longer have diminished return. So the idea is to not hit the max. I guess what I would prefer is that I do not overexert myself. Overexerting myself is a recipe for burnout. So I myself, it's been a very long time since I haven't reached a minimum. So oftentimes when people think about learning and studying, they think about minimums, as in how much the minimum amount of effort I need to reach my goal. regrettably, I have very little to say about that recently because I don't often have that thought in mind. Through my regular day, I'm more prone to overwork myself. So oftentimes this 80-20 rule is to restrain myself from doing overwork. And that can be seen in a lot of younger people who are starting new projects. When they start new projects, right? And I'm using projects figuratively, I suppose, as figurative as possible. Like, for example, I met someone who, very, very briefly yesterday, who hopped in and told me about how Korean is working for them. And then they spend a lot of time comparing, doing the comparing thing, and then rationalizing that they're paying for a service to learn something. The whole time I was trying to ask them, how are they learning? What are they doing to learn? Instead, they constantly gave me hot takes on like, oh, Duolingo is the worst. This is best. I'm paying for this. And like, I have no inclination that this person actually is interested in the way they learn. They're more interested in what became of their investments, or they're rationalizing their motivations. That is perfectly understandable. And that passion drives people to do a lot of things very, very quickly. It's the passion project, right? You're going in deep. And I hope that person doesn't burn out within the first 3 months and then decide, well, Korean is too difficult, and then they move on to the next burn cycle, right? So for myself, the 80-20, trying not to make anime into like my stream session is probably the thing that keeps me consistent. And I know where my cap is, which I tend to flirt with the cap here and there. And also me speaking right now, interrupting right in the middle of this thing is considered a break, right? Now I'm practicing something that I am not focused on this. So breaking up things when talking to things also factor in to my study routine. With that said, I know when I'm not learning a lot. And at this moment, I'm not learning a lot, but I am practicing a lot. So that's okay. I think in the end of the day, I would choose to practice something as opposed to not doing anything at all, right? And that's kind of the concept that I feel I no longer relate. It's very, very difficult for me to relate to someone who is trying to figure out what is the easiest way to do something, right? The easiest way to do something. Like, how long do I have to study Japanese each day or practice Japanese each day so I can get significant progress, but it doesn't eat into my fun time or my other time? My answer is, you aren't practicing Japanese every single day, like every time, everything you do, because that's what I do, right? It's a part of me. It's difficult to play a video game without thinking about stuff that I know in Japanese. Largely because I'm thinking about the Japanese culture as well in a lot of video games or the anime I think of, So those are the practice things. And it's rare for me to sit there and say, I know all of this, but I just like it because I know all of it. Doom scrolling, for example. If you see a cat video and then you see a repost of that cat video and then you tell yourself, oh, that hits the same. Like, this gives me that same dopamine. Oh, it still hits the same. Like, that's not something that I can relate to anymore. I really rarely empathize with that. I do have guilty pleasures though. I call them guilty pleasures for myself because largely when I'm really down or I have too much learning going on and too much things to juggle, I might go to something that's comforting, like a rerun of Bob's Burger, but I'm not intently watching Bob's Burger with the intent of applying a new skill, like practicing a new skill or learning a new skill. I'm legitimately background watching Bob's Burger, and that can help. I usually do something like that in conjunction with something I'm practicing. So I might be writing like an essay and I'm using Bob's Burgers in the back to inspire something, to trigger something. So oftentimes that's how I negotiate. It's every waking hour, except when I'm eating, right? Eating, sleeping, those are the times when I'm pretty much trying to practice verbatim things I've been doing for a while. Do I use any tricks to help remember what I learn, or do I use rote memory, brute force? Tricks. That's an interesting thought. If I had to go in quickly, right, just very, very quickly, you always turn to something if you always turn to something if you get overwhelmed. How do you mean? Well, what do you mean? In what manner do you always turn to something? What is the something you turn to if you get overwhelmed? For me, the trick, I understand the word trick. This can be very hot. I don't have any particular tricks. Most of the time, the things that people talk about, like WaniKani, for example, learn by mnemonics, right? Learn by using mnemonics. And then, you know, you have another influencer that says things like, this is exciting, and then these are context-based. Use it or lose it. These come in many forms, and my trick is all of these things. And the trick is not necessarily, I don't see it as a trick anymore. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen it as a trick. These are fundamental to me. Fundamentals of learning. So the fundamentals of learning is to integrate all the hot takes that you hear. These are hot takes because they're being rediscovered by people who, in my opinion, out of as respectfully as I can, they did not acquire the fundamentals of learning when they were growing up. And that's perfectly reasonable because they could have, I don't know their background, right? I don't know the people's background. They could have had a terrifying childhood, you know? A terrifying childhood, low accessibility. There are so many ways to express low engagement, parentals, absence, right? Absence of parentals. There are so many ways to explain when someone becomes like greater than 20 plus, right? And they're missing some foundations of learning. And those foundational pieces of learning are being reintroduced in different contexts. So when you're looking at an influencer and they're saying something like, oh yeah, this app, it works so well. Like, you know, it has motivation, and the sources of motivation might be like gamification. And then they like the social aspect, right? They like the social aspect. However, then when they take this and there's like a dissonance, there's a detachment to how to use this for learning, right? That's kind of, in my opinion, a telltale sign of a background that did not have the opportunities to associate the fundamentals of learning with all the rest. Like, some people don't consider a social aspect as a property of learning. They don't often attach motivation, interest, gamification, like reward, right? Reward placement versus like perceived difficulty, right? These relationships often are not established, in my opinion. What's a fundamental that is difficult to understand, but perhaps inconsistently intuited? The difficulty, I alluded to this already. Difficulty, the perception of difficulty, and its reward when it comes to learning, right? Oftentimes things that are hard initially are coming from a place of incompetence. And the reward tends to be higher when you circumnavigate the incompetence. But the reward is coming from the appearance, in my parent, the appearance or the perception of competence. Right? So oftentimes people use hard and easy, in my opinion, in the inverse relationship, where they want something to be reduced to an ease so that it can be approachable. And then later discover that the reward is less than expected. And this is a very touchy subject because it's a balancing act. It's not one or the other. When something is easy and approachable, the reward is lightly diminished. Diminished because the amount of work that you're doing is less, right? And then when something is perceived as hard but unapproachable, right? If it becomes too hard and it's unapproachable, then you don't get any reward because it doesn't happen. You don't show up, right? You don't show up. However, if it's harder than this, it is likely to increase in reward, and it might supersede or pass your expectations. So oftentimes the biggest reward is something that is approachable but as hard as possible. This is the middle ground. So something that's in between your definition, your specific definition of hard, and your specific definition of easy, in which it is approachable so you can get started, but as hard as possible so that to maximize the reward. Oftentimes the disappointment comes from the ease of things. Case in point, Duolingo. So some of the hardest properties of Duolingo address some of the hardest properties that's missing in learning aptitude, and that's motivation. I guess they're called effector factors, if anyone wants to be technical about it. I guess some of the effector factors, which is or effectors, I forgot what they're called, but one of them, like factors, motivation. Duolingo focuses on motivation to get you to show up. So that's part of 80, I would even argue it's 80% of its design over 20% of everything else. It's like maybe 60 to 80% of its design is to reduce the effector factor, which is to make it approachable. The problem is, since it's incredibly approachable and they reduce to make it incredibly approachable, you're not working as hard as possible. And they keep it static. It doesn't like go up dramatically. So the reward, typically reward should be tempered, right? But instead, which I think it's a little deleterious due to Duolingo's position as most popular, right? Most popular position. And I think this is misunderstood as most efficacious, right? And what happens here is, since it's the most popular and people do a leap of logic for efficacious, if a lot of people are using it, it must be very effective, right? Well, it's very effective for this, which makes it look easy. Great, right? but the content itself is actually reduced for ease. So then that ease will lead to less reward, but consistent reward. So Duolingo keeps someone consistent. It teaches them, well, it's supposedly supposed to infer and provide a sense of understanding that when you ask yourself in a learning process, what is Duolingo? What aspects of Duolingo is keeping you consistent? And can you take that consistency and apply it to something that is less approachable, aka hard, right? Less approachable, in order to achieve a higher return on reward, which is your aptitude, so that your expectations, with all this in mind, your expectations can be grounded properly, as opposed to being betrayed all the time. So when someone yesterday said, oh, this app that I pay for does all these things and Duolingo doesn't do any of these things, my first thought is, why did you bring up the fact that you need to pay for it? That's already a source of motivation. When you pay for something, there's an obligation. Duolingo, you don't pay for Duolingo. Well, that person didn't pay for Duolingo, right? And then they compared apple and oranges. They said what their app did, or they generally hand-wavingly share what they did, and it was everything Duolingo was not designed to do, right? In fact, they failed, in my opinion, to even say the thing that Duolingo was designed to do. And that's kind of the aptitude. Your expectations cloud a lot of your consistency. So while you focus on easy and hard, hopefully it gives you an aptitude of whether it is approachable or unapproachable at first. Then it requires some learning fundamentals to understand how you measure your reward and temper your expectations, because largely without that, it doesn't frame consistency and due diligence. How do you stay consistent if you're not measuring if your expectations are being met and your reward and your effort is being met? This is really nebulous because we don't want to get into specifics. None of these terms are specific. The fundamentals of learning is a very much predicated on someone's background, right? And I can't anticipate any of these background. If it was the closest friend, perhaps, because I've been around them for a really long time. But generally speaking, when a stranger approaches me and tells me all these things, I need to gauge whether they're even concerned about the stuff. So when someone says this is working, I'm not even sure they know if it's working or not. Right? There's no aptitude. They didn't explain how they know it's better. They said it's better by listing a bunch of things that they would measure to determine if it's better. Right? Let's see. You're gonna catch up on the latest episode of Sakamoto Days. Oh man, I can't wait to start watching Sakamoto Days when it's done. Yeah. I'll talk to you a little bit later, Keko. Do you find the reward? Okay, is it just building a fundamental basis that can be used across all aspects of learning? Yes. That's what I'm that's what I'm nebulously talking about. The fundamentals of learning, in the sense that you're collecting your learning experience while you're learning things. So oftentimes when you engage in skill building, after a while, people don't need, I'm gonna say people, like, nebulously, do not need to build anymore. They don't need to focus on their fundamentals of learning. Also, what does nebulous mean? Undefined, murky, hazy, not specific, nebulous, like a nebula. nebula, like the galaxies, like nebulas, they're like hazy, they're undefined. It's so nebulous is my way of saying not specific, right? So people at some point will stop. They don't need anymore, right? If you know how to learn, right? If you know how to learn well enough to be satisfied with your obligations, whatever those obligations are, be it your own goal or job or something, rarely do you need to, you're not incentivized to learn, redefine your learning anymore. You use your learning fundamentals to engage in skill building. That skill building relies on your years prior in learning. So you don't have to relearn how to learn. Like if you don't tackle skills that require fundamental changes to your learning, then you don't have to relearn anything, right? You don't have to discover anything or change the way you learn or add to it. For me, it doesn't stop there. I learn new skills in order to push my learning capacity to the limit. So like the thing I focus on most of the time is learning curve. Like it's great, you know, you have like your learning curve tends to be something, I don't know how do they represent it nowadays. So your learning curve, this rate here, right, can be different for different skills. When I get about here, when it hits about here, it's already past the 80% mark. So if I hit the 80 percentile, I tend to wean off of a skill. Largely because I like building new skills. So I like collecting new skills. And you have to do the learning curve every single time when you're doing a new skill. So since I spend a lot of time in learning curve, like learning something, I tend to focus on this aspect, and it deals with building new skills, but figuring out how those skills are built are some of the most interesting things. And it gets to a point where like even in Duolingo, after 150 to 200 days, there's really no new building learning things. Gamification kind of helps with that from time to time, where, you know, they switch up the game, you know, the game switches up on you over time, and then you're engaged with that game, right? And after a while, it feels like you're doing the same thing over and over again. So what I do for Duolingo is I change it up myself and continue to consume the content. The content itself can become static. And WaniKani is static in its SRS. The content itself is more dynamic. So the content itself is being dynamic, but the approach is static. And this is, for me, the more common, popular approach nowadays, to create a static learning environment to promote consistency. Because I think one of the greatest difficulties facing, like top 5 difficulties facing people in self-study, is consistency. And keeping something static tends to promote consistency because it's comforting. Now, it also leads to diminished return a lot of times because you've done it like 100 times. The 100th time will likely be less engaging than the first time over time. The longer something goes statically, the diminished return of engagement, right? You're less and less engaged with your routine unless you do something about it. Largely, systems like this stay static in order to keep you consistent. Consistency creates efficiency. That efficiency reduces your engagement because you're using less energy. That's how you become more efficient. You spend less energy, and that energy produces less reward because you're not engaged anymore. So these are like the two things that go back and forth. Do you find the reward of knowledge enough to motivate you to learn? No, absolutely not. I do find the reward of wisdom enough to motivate me for life. The reward of knowledge is not sufficient. The internet is filled with knowledge. It doesn't mean you're motivated to learn everything that the internet has to offer. I find separating a difficult task into smaller tasks makes it appear more approachable while still being rewarded when you finish all the tasks at the end. Okay, yeah, but you're talking about the end here. When I'm talking about a learning process, it's across the board. So if you never reach the end, then it's not like you didn't fail. You didn't fail even if you didn't reach the end. So yes, it is a very excellent way. If you have a task that's this big and you can break it up into like 2 smaller tasks, that makes it approachable for sure. That is an excellent way to get around the approachability. And then you're hoping that the volume you are responsible for, you finish to the end, right? And that is the goal. So this is determined by a promise, an obligation to yourself that you are assuming you would reach the end. So this task that's big that you broke up into small parts, you're assuming and you're obligating that you're going to finish to the end. Language learning, for example, this end is, to me, not visible. So you can view Japanese as a culmination of whatever. Like, this is a differing in perspective. I don't see language having an end per se, because it's a fundamental life skill for personally. So how do you divvy up and make something approachable if it has no end, right? Or if the volume is so inconceivably big, you could either choose to embrace nihilism and never start. That happens with a lot of people. It's like, oh my gosh, Japanese is really, really difficult. I shouldn't bother starting because I don't know how much work it is. And regardless of how much I break it up, since I don't know how much it is, I cannot plan for it. So it's unapproachable even from this perspective when you break it down. Instead, when you're process oriented, so this is goal oriented. The thing that you talked about, it's goal oriented. You know how much you were going to do, so you break them up in order to reach that thing, right? That knowledge part. Process is, well, what can I do now? And what can I foreseeably see now in the least approachable but still doable way with the highest turn, right? So the least but still approachable manner, and go from there. I do have a goal, right? A goal in mind, but that goal is expected to change while I'm doing this. So if I'm constantly trying my best, that goal at the end will not be the same with every passing day. With every passing time I achieve the next goal, the goal at the end changes. It could stay the same if you choose to make it stay the same. So in order to break up a task and say that you can still achieve that same amount is suggesting that you break up the task and that is only the thing that you can achieve. This task in total is the only thing that you'll pay attention to. That is very efficient. It's very efficient, and it's excellent if you need to get something done the way it has to be done. So like a job, for example, you have to finish and complete this. It has a defined endpoint, and you get that done. In terms of learning a language, I have approached it as an open-ended strategy. So I go until something else takes my interest. There's no definite end. So I wouldn't try to break it up into something like I should learn 100 kanji today. I should learn 200 by next month, 300 by the following month, in order for me to reach a goal of 1,000 in, I don't know, 3 months or something. That I can do if I have a definite goal. And usually for these type of things that I do voluntarily, like hobbies and whatnot, hobbies are open-ended. They don't necessarily have end goals. Like there's no such, to me, when I say Japanese, there's no such thing as fluency is the end goal. Mastery of something is the end goal of something that I want to do for the rest of my life. That kind of thing. It's a different perspective because you might be learning a language or a task or something that requires to be completed. And that is a very excellent way of doing it. Breaking a large task down until it's just approachable, right? Approachable. And when you get your foot through the door of approachability, hammering it out, going down to the approachability level. Like some days you might have off days, so you reduce the task to just approachable, right? And continue. And it also means that from time to time you can elevate that, so you continuously do your best, right? Try your best over time. Because doing a lot of small tasks make it seem less daunting, but then once you do all of them, you get the reward feeling of doing the big task in the end. Exactly. Do you think the idea of obligation is innate or learned? That's a good question. I think there are both. The answer is both. The innate obligation that I'm thinking of, innate obligation is when it costs something. Learned obligation. I can't spell. It's fine. Obligation is when you're gaining something. So that's probably this is reductive. This is very reductive. Let me give an example to illustrate. If you're paying to get something, it's generally innate. It's a human condition. So for example, if you're paying the subscription for Netflix, you're obligating yourself to get the value of what you paid for, your cost. If I flip it, you can do it with the same example. If I pay for Netflix, I know that I'm spending $15 or something, whatever the cost is. I pay it with the idea that I have pleasure to be gained. As in, this is my privilege. And oh geez, privilege. And the idea is I didn't have to spend that. I didn't have to spend that money to gain pleasure of like entertainment and whatnot from Netflix. So that $15 is seen as a gain of function. So you're not obligated. And what happened, you can learn to obligate it. As in, this is something that you can choose to decide if it's something you're willing to pay for or something that you need, which is an innate obligation. Like, I feel bad. I need to get happier. I'm going to pay $15 for this meal because that meal is going to fill my need. My need is innate. When you pay $15, like say you're gonna pay for a $15 meal, but you decided, I'm gonna pay for the $25 meal. I don't need to spend $10 extra for that extra fancier meal, but it certainly would be nice to have it, right? That is a learned obligation. As in, you're getting extra value, but you don't really need to spend it. And in learning, that can be a combination of both too. What's a learned obligation? A learned obligation would be you expect mistakes. And with mistakes comes opportunities. Opportunities to learn why and how you've made those mistakes. It's an opportunity for self-awareness. These are learned obligations. When I use WaniKani, I expect to have mistakes. That expectation is learned. It's not innate. The innate is that you don't ever make mistakes. So when someone needs to be correct, because correct is innate. So if you're going into language learning and you're saying, I want to learn Japanese so I can be fluent in Japanese, so I can understand all of Japanese, that's an innate obligation. A learned obligation would be, I'll learn as much as I can, but I have learned that I'm satisfied with anything that I've learned because it's a plus. I'm doing something extra. I can still watch anime without the need to be correct. Right? So I guess it's the thing is we have need versus optional. And I think anything that, and it can vary between people, obviously. However, if you think something is optional, it's typically a learned obligation to be consistent. If you need it, it's an innate obligation, and it will largely be consistent out of need, right? However, the problem with this is there's also an opportunity to burn out. Versus this way, you need to learn the obligation to be consistent. And what is the bottom line? You don't do anything. So the two sides of the coin, of the same coin, right? If you need to learn the obligation in order to be consistent, you have to learn what the obligation is. If it's a need, you have to learn to deviate away from burnout. Because if it's a need, you're going to constantly need it. It's going to become a dependency, and you're going to need more and more and more. Do you need TikTok's dopamine, or do you find it as an extra thing added to your life? YouTube Shorts is an extra thing that I add to my life. I actually use YouTube Shorts for inspiration, for extra inspiration, for storytelling during my stream. I can skip YouTube Short at any time because I can tackle and use my learned obligation. What is my learned obligation? I need to come up with a story today. Maybe I should go and look on YouTube Shorts to have an opportunity to create a story quickly, right? To have something to talk about. I don't need YouTube Shorts, so it's an option. And since I don't need it, it doesn't trigger an innate response that creates dependency. So do I need WaniKani? I don't. Do I need Duolingo? I don't. Do I need to learn Japanese? I actually don't. So most of the stuff that I talk about, it involves learned obligations. If you're having trouble coping, right? Coping tends to involve innate obligations. You cope with obligations that are innate. They are not optional. They must be done. And I talk about those things too. Oftentimes dealing with stories and whatnot. However, I don't treat language learning as a form of innate obligation. And oftentimes you're probably going to talk about habits, right? When it comes to obligations, when we're talking about innate versus learned obligations, you're also going to separate into habits. And habits, innate tends to be addiction. And then when you're learned, it tends to be, by default, it's a habit. Because of like English vernacular, the default is habits have a positive and or neutral characteristic of the same behavior. And when it becomes deleterious and non-sustainable, it becomes addiction, which typically often deals with innate. Like, for example, coping strategies fall under this. And then habits would be something like self-improvement. Right. These are large umbrellas. I'm being nebulous again. These are large umbrellas, but habits tend to involve a neutral and or positive way of looking at it. And then coping deals with an innate need for it, and it's not sustainable. Non-sustainable habit, quote unquote habit. Habits, self-improvement tends to be sustainable. Right. So learned habits are never negative. Ooh. No, they can be negative. Learned habits can be negative. This is a general idea. No, these both are, sorry. This arrow isn't bypassing it. It's this way. So through the habit formation, both innate and learned obligations feed into habit formation. Now, on the one hand, when something is incredibly innate, it can form an addiction. But addiction and habits are the same words. Like, they're repeated behavior that you're used to doing. The way that something becomes an addiction is it's non-sustainable. And when it becomes a habit or stays a habit, it becomes sustainable. So they are one and the same. Like, we're not doing a 0 and 1s. It's more like a Likert scale. Like, if you're leaning towards innate, there's often properties of what people will call as addiction. But you can be addicted to things like addicted to learning, right? What that word suggests is there's a dependency. So it means that there is something more innate than there's like 80, let's just say 60% innate and 40% learned obligations, right? So in my opinion, the more likely that you're dependent on something is the idea or perception of a need for that habit. Like, I have needs. Sorry, that's a little out of context. Like, for example, in the evening, I have mania, right? I have mania. I think about ideas, and then I have coping strategies for them. So say, for example, idea yesterday. Whenever someone says Duolingo sucks, right? Duolingo sucks. And my thought is, tell me more. Tell me more. But then the person doesn't care, right? Doesn't care, they leave. They leave after saying a bunch of things that are sort of unrelated to why Duolingo sucks. And then my thought is, I'll have many, many thoughts overnight, many thoughts to try to analyze the situation. Like, what could I have done different? Things that I can promote, right? That leads to mania a lot of times. Mania is something that is like becoming unhinged, right? A little bit unhinged. Basically, I have a lot of thoughts at the same time. Lots of thoughts. It goes where it occupies my time. So that's what mania is. So I have a lot of learned obligations and innate obligations. My innate obligations is telling me I should relent to the mania and chase down every rabbit hole. My compulsion is telling me that I need to do this or else I'm not going to get a lot of sleep, right? However, there are other ways to learn certain things to help me cope with it. So I have coping strategies that are learned over time, and I most definitely have innate obligations to entertain my mania. Otherwise, I won't feel satisfied. So this stuff I do every evening. And then my learn obligation, one of my learn obligations is to turn it into something constructive. So what do, I turn it into a story that I can try to best explain in the moment. And here I am talking about that exact same story. So these are the learned obligation as a form of coping for something that I inherently have an innate use for. And you might be saying, well, that's not an addiction. Like, I sort of agree. It's a compulsion. So I compulsively do these things. So in order to create a dependency for coping, I use something that would look like a habit. However, it relies on a dependency. I'm going to have this form of mania all the time. So my coping strategies are a form to address something I'm dependent on. I usually refer to these as habits because addiction often deals with an element of uncontrollability. So I no longer really refer to my mania as something that is an addiction, but more of a habit. I formed lots of different habits to cope with the mania. How do I constructively provide an outlet for these things? Like when you hate studying Japanese after 4 years of, I don't know, disappointing progress, which is a very real thing. I've read far more than I want to encounter this type of thing. How do you cope with it? And then how do you cope with it in a way to learn an obligation to make it productive so that you don't create an addiction to it, right? A love-hate relationship with your current study methods is an addiction. You can't quit it, and you also hate it when you do it, but when you do it, it's so comforting because it's innate now. Like, learned obligations can feel like innate and vice versa. So there are things you can control that you think you can control, but you can't. And then there are things that you can control, but no longer becomes controllable. So these lines are very, very blurred for a lot of people. The idea I'm suggesting is these are ways to maybe help organize some of these thoughts, and it can be helpful to others. However, there's no defined like delineation of these things. That human emotions would be far more manageable if yes, manic. It is related to the word manic. It's the noun version of manic. Mania, when someone's manic, they're in a process of mania, or they have mania when they're manic. Yeah. So I don't have a manic disorder, so I can't even imagine what it's like when someone has like manic attacks or thought storms. I don't want to give the extreme impression. I do cope with it every day. However, I try to make it as constructive as I can, right? That's somewhat similar to addiction. Addiction can seem like a need, and then if you don't use whatever you're addicted to, then the day will automatically perceive to be worse. Yes, but once the using of an addictive substance seems like something that will add to your day rather than the lack of taking away, that's a marker of overcoming the addiction. That's the yeah, and I would say as opposed to overcoming, this might deflate some people's perceptions. If this does deflate, I would encourage not to look at it this way. However, for myself, when you overcome an addiction is converting. You are converting and or refining an addiction into a habit. oftentimes. And we're not talking about like extreme things like, you know, alcohol abuse and whatnot. Those are one-way tickets, right? We're talking about more nuanced things like learning habits, right? Quote unquote learning habits. Lots of people think of it as learning methods, right? Your methods, learning methods. Well, in order for a learning method to be efficacious, it eventually has to go from a method to a habit. Well, a habit has the propensity of being an addiction or by default a habit. So are you developing a habit or are you developing a dependency? And the dependency really often deals with the nuance of, is it sustainable? So lots of habits are temporary, right? You could say, oh, I'm going to learn through SRS, right? And then suddenly you're like, nothing else works. Nothing else works. And then you need to do the other things, right? Speak regularly with natives, if that's one of the things. Read manga. So at some point, the question is, did the method instill a dependency? And this is the root, in my opinion, of this is the core of, I would say, 60 to 70% of what most people consider as constructive criticism that I encounter so far in terms of learning approaches. So when someone comes up to me and they see the stranger writing a review about Duolingo, and then that person says like, oh yeah, Duolingo is the worst, it's absolute garbage. It's like, oh, so what language are you learning? Korean. Oh, I haven't used the Korean course, nor have I used any of your apps that you're saying, so I can't really comment on it. However, I'm glad to see that you found your own way of working. How does it work, by the way? And whatnot, right? That deals with an element of acquiring the knowledge. But this person instead decided to highlight all the things that they're dependent on and then fail to see what other things actually do. That's like playing a game you love, FromSoft games, right? And then suddenly you play a game that isn't by FromSoft and it's like, man, this game just feels off. It just doesn't feel right because it's not the same thing. That is a dependency. How much does that affect someone's constructive criticism? Usually that's not considered. I don't think for most part, journalists or people who make snap judgments, they usually you rely on innate, intuitive things as opposed to looking for self-awareness, right? It's a lot of effort. I don't think it's really necessary for someone to be happy. You can feel out the things you want and need until maybe like you have a particular addiction that is particularly detrimental, right? However, we're not really talking about deleterious things. We're talking about habit formation. And when you're overcoming an addiction, to me, is converting and refining a habit. A habit is sustainable, an addiction is not. So it's a little reductive. I concede it's a little reductive. One of the core differences is addictions are deleterious over time. Habits are not, because they are sustainable and they can be proactive, right? They can also be proactive. Not all habits are proactive. They could be a coping mechanism. A habit could be a coping mechanism where you have a negative day and so you're at 0, and a coping habit, something that you're using to cope, can get you back to 0. Another way to look at habits is proactive habits. They take you from 0 to a higher point and tries to maintain that higher point, right? So we're talking about any one habit, not like and your whole self is a combination of many of these. So there's ones that are proactive. This is what I would call as proactive habits. And then these are coping strategies. And then we have addiction, which is you start at 0 and it prevents you from climbing back up. So this is non-sustainable. This would be an addiction. So what happens is you're constantly trying really, really hard to get back up to it. So you start funneling other things in order to make up for that addiction. And then you combine all of these, as a net graph, and you hope that over time you stay above 0, right? You stay above the 0 point. This graph would be the net of all your habits and addictions, right? I have an addiction, so to speak, that's non-sustainable. It costs me things, but it is also balanced by other things. What are my costs? My cost is that I can't stop having manic episodes, right? Mania is going to happen every once in a while, and that is balanced out by my many other habits. So I don't come on stream every day being less and less energy. I don't come on stream being less and less enthusiastic about WaniKani or talking about this stuff. I don't. Over time, no matter how much someone asks me the same questions, make the same trite comment like, hey, I see you using Duolingo, it's garbage. No matter how many times that happens, I often focus on building hopefully proactive habits in order to counter or balance all my innate obligations due to like habits that I have that are largely addictions, right? Hello there, Valentine. I hope that's reasonable what I'm saying. Yeah, it sucks that I can't give you exact details, largely because I would think that's incredibly misleading. It would be negligence on my part to presume that I can give exact examples that other people would or should have. I chose mania because it's specific to me. So this is something I can talk about myself. And I hope that others will use their learning strategies, to discover something about themselves, right? And the knowledge that I used are fine, like, coping, knowing these words like, mania and whatnot. That's the knowledge portion. However, I like to believe that people have the wisdom or develop a wisdom using this knowledge. Oftentimes they don't, in my opinion. They don't give me the essence or tell me that they have learned something from something, right? When someone says, this app teaches you grammar, explain it to me. Explain how it teaches you grammar, because you said Duolingo does not teach grammar, right? This is a specific example from yesterday. Duolingo doesn't teach grammar. And then the app was like, talk to me in Korean. That's how this person abbreviated this. Although I would say it's pretty foolish or inexperienced to use an acronym like this to someone who already said they're not learning Korean to expect what this stands for, right? That's a deduction of this person's habits. Not only that, this person used the abbreviation this, which is apparently low key. I had no idea. that person had to clarify that. So when this person is talking, it's already pretty clear that this person generalizes things, reduce things on the expense of not being aware of the person they're talking to, or really themselves. Because when I asked them, oh, how does this thing teach? Like, how do you use it? How does it teach grammar? Because I need to know what you mean by Duolingo doesn't teach grammar. I could guess and presume certain things, but I asked them. Instead, what they did was they doubled down and criticized Duolingo for not doing so-and-so for them. And that's great, I suppose. I'm glad they're not using Duolingo anymore, because it seems like they really, really hate it. The thing that I want to criticize them for, which they weren't there because they dipped already, is I wanted to ask them how. Like, how? Why is this better? Like, you say it's better, but you haven't demonstrated that it is better. So I literally told the person, I don't even know if they were around, I told them, I'm sorry if this might sound a little well, I didn't say I'm sorry, like, pardon me, with the most respect I can have. You have not explained to me why this is better. Like, you constantly use lots of bold language, and I earnestly have a lot of reservations talking to you about your opinions, because I don't actually know how you know this. Right? Like, I don't know. So it's difficult to even anticipate or talk to you about, oh, okay, I see. So I can't like recommend anything. I can't talk about anything, because legitimately it doesn't explain anything to me. And even when I ask them, they continue to do something that I'm very experienced in doing. So if they stay long enough, I have counter arguments. However, I was waiting. You know, I gave the stick to them, and they did not reciprocate. So that was the end of that. How goes it? It's going pretty well. We were gonna finish this, but it's about halfway. We're about halfway through our reviews, right, for today. And then we got some fun questions over on the Twitch side of things, Valentine. I'm sure you can probably gather some of the essence of what I'm talking about right now, seeing that you've been here for several of them before. Do you think you can tell if someone is arguing in bad faith, and how do you feel with that? I asked myself, okay, so yeah, I do deduce a lot of things, right? I deduce a lot of things. And bad faith could be on a scale. Deal, not feel. No worries. I understand what you mean. So bad or good. Let's say you're on a radar, right? This person is clearly saw my Duolingo background when I was writing my Chinese stuff, right? Probably because the motivation was pretty clear that they wanted to focus on how Duolingo failed them. That's perfectly all right, right? Now, is this in bad faith or good faith? Now, hear me out. This is going to sound like I'm deflecting slightly. I'm slightly deflecting this. And I concede. I concede to deflecting this though. Let's think one step before. I stream. Were you here when I talked about happy dollars? So I stream because I have a lot of happy dollars. So I have a lot of happy dollars to give, right? I have a lot of happy dollars to give. And happy dollars is this currency that I describe as someone's propensity to tolerate and invest. So I don't like, I know people like to measure things, right? So I wanted to give it a unit. It's called a happy dollar. So when I come on stream, let's just say I have 1,000 happy dollars, right? So before anything happens, whether this person whether this person appear or not, right? This hypothetical person. Sorry, I'm gonna have to miss your explanation. My dog's going mental. Oh, yeah, okay, no worries. I'll just continue the thing. So I'll wrap it up and give you a more succinct conversation, succinct answer. So I have a lot of happy dollars. Hello there, Blair. So I have a lot of happy dollars. So Procall, let me contextualize. They asked me, what if I deduced that someone is in poor faith or in good faith or what have you, right? Since I have 1,000 happy dollars, even though as I'm talking, I'm asking them and trying to ascertain what their motives are and or what they want to do or how I can contribute, what I know is that regardless of how terrible someone is, which would be a very cynical way of looking at things, or how good someone is, which is a very optimistic way of looking something, and then realistically is I stream, I have happy dollars. How much is this guy gonna cost, or this person's gonna cost? If I can pay for it, it's irrelevant if they're bad or good. I chose to stream with a fixed amount of energy, a fixed amount of dollars, so I'm there to give them out, right? When someone exceeds this amount, I choose to excuse myself. So I would say, hey, I'm a little bit tired today. I hope it's all right if I really can't agree with you. You might want to find someone else who agrees with you or something like that, because I don't have the energy anymore. I'm kind of wrapping up. Although if they were in poor faith, I would still do it. Like, it's irrelevant if they're in poor faith or not. Like, if they say Duolingo failed them, I want to know what. Because I'm spending my energy already. I'm not expecting to gain energy from anyone. It's great. Oh, this is kind of like learned obligation versus innate obligation. My innate obligation is to be polite, right? When I'm streaming. So that's great. But my learned obligation gives me currency to spend, my happy dollars. So I use this currency to try, regardless if it's poor or bad faith, or like good faith or something. And if I gain dollars, it's extra. So like Gecko coming back and saying something cool gives me extra dollars. Happy dollars. Extra happy dollars. So now that Procall is back, the long story short, Procall, is that it starts earlier. I stream with amount of currency, right? I stream with an amount of currency. So I determine if I have enough to maintain politeness. And that's it. So if this person is in poor faith, usually I have enough currency to entertain them, like entertain that person's idea, try to talk to them, be a punching bag for them. That's fine. Because this is for me to give. So say someone is in bad faith. I also see them as someone who wants a specific amount of happy dollars. I usually bring enough happy dollars with me in order to give them happy dollars, and then they go on their way. Sometimes that happy dollar, instead of throwing exactly what they want, they give me an opportunity. So hear me out. What happens if I gave them 150 happy dollars as opposed to their $100? That person in poor faith could end up being in good faith. And that's why I bring a lot of cash with me. I bring a lot of happy dollars with me. I have enough there are very few moments in my 6+ years where someone was so toxic that they eviscerated, like I stopped the stream, basically. You will know when I run out of happy dollars is when I stop the stream immediately. I haven't ever stopped a stream prematurely due to the poor faith in someone. So I make sure I come with enough happy dollars. That's what supersedes it. So when you say what happens or how would I deal with it, I generously give them the time of day, and it could change something, or it's money well spent, or it's money spent because I chose to stream. That's probably the streaming. Starting my stream is already an investment. Hello there. Oh, is that? How's it going? How's it going, Mattia? Do you have an idea of metaphorically loaning your happy dollars, borrowing happy dollars? Not really. My metaphor for metaphor for generating happy dollars is everything I'm not obligated to do. What am I not obligated to do? Watch anime. Actually, here, watch anime, yapping. So hear me out. When you're saying loaning or borrowing, I'm generating happy dollars right now. So yes, I'm spending happy dollars, but I'm also generating happy dollars right now, right? It's a homeostatic process. Not really. That's a bad example. That's not the appropriate. It's a stock, I suppose. It's a stock. So right now I'm getting happier as I'm progressing going. So I'm not actually spending more than I'm generating, right? So regardless of how long we talk about this, if there are more happy people than poor faith, the net is still towards happy, so we can keep going. Now there are dollars that aren't happy dollars. There are physical dollars. And these do not regenerate. These do not generate in the process. What's a physical dollar? My voice. My voice has at least a constant uptime of 8 hours, maybe. Then it takes a whole evening. It takes a rest period in order to generate more physical dollars. So that's a problem. Hunger deals with physical dollars. So these are non-negotiable, right? These are innate obligations. I have to eat. I have to rest my voice. So that stuff I can't do. I have to sleep. So those are the things that are not happy dollars. They can help with happy dollars, though. If I improve my physical dollars, it allows me to use my physical dollars and generate happy dollars. Right? You spend the utility of your body, your mind, your voice, your eyes, your hands, your time, and you use it to stock happy dollars. And my happy dollars, they're pretty big. Weird flex. I know. This is going to be a weird flex, but I have a lot of happy dollars, guys. And when I have a lot of happy dollars, philanthropy. And to me, that's also why rich people, like very, very rich people, may eventually engage in philanthropy. Because I think some of that wealth, some of the convenience, and all the things that they do accrue enough happy dollars to be given out. And I know that is reductively changing the aspect of having money, but I want to go away from money. Happy dollars includes money, right? Someone's welfare, someone's selfishness is dependent on their ability, what their threshold is. If you exceed the threshold of selfishness, then there is happy dollars to redistribute. It causes exploration of empathy when you're no longer concerned with yourself. Now, you can argue there are people who have lots and lots of money and they're still selfish. Yes, because their requirements is higher. I'm not saying it's a fixed amount, right? So there are people who exercise far more need of selfish gain than, it varies. For me, I seek empathy because I have enough happiness. I'm grateful. I'm incredibly privileged to have loving people around me. I don't need any more money. I don't need any more legacy. Like, I don't need people to tell me I'm really good or really bad or really suck or done lots of things. I just like making other people, I like empathizing with other people, largely because I have a surplus. Now, you can argue like a billionaire still wants more money is because they're still trying to fulfill their happy dollar quota. Like, they haven't reached a state where they're like, I have enough, right? I have enough for myself. Now it's to give back. If you want someone, if you want someone who has this, who may not even have enough happy dollars. No, they have happy dollars, but they deal with a lot of things that they cost a lot. They acknowledge that their body and their mind cost a lot of money, but they still have enough happy dollars. John Green. I say it like a broken record. John Green, Hank Green. Listen to how they talk. When they talk about how they have to spend generating happy dollars. They obviously didn't use this analogy. The happy dollars is something I don't know if anyone uses this analogy, but they spend and generate all the time. But the last thing they talk about is they often say they have enough. They have enough happy dollars. Now, time to reinvest those happy dollars. It can come in the form of literal money because they generate literal money. But the happiness is that they reinvest that literal money into generating more happy dollars. So it makes them happy that they're able to generate liquidatable money in order to make themselves happier about their lives. That's lovely. It's why I resonate with them, even though I have nowhere near their ability to make physical currency and whatnot, because I don't really have the skills or personality for that. Must would be humble seeing the level of happy dollars you're generating. I hope Elon, hear me out. I'm not gonna predicate on, we're talking about happiness here, so I hope he's like, Elon is brilliant, right? Brilliant in some ways, skills in many ways. I hope he's happy enough in a way that in the future, or maybe now or something, it can be felt by other people, right? Obviously, the more you need is your own personal threshold. For me, I have stopped asking myself what I need and started asking myself, these are the questions I ask. What's my potential return if I reinvest, or if I invest forward? And a lot of times the return is not to me. I don't need the return to me anymore. It's inherent that if someone is able to invest forward my happy dollars, that in turn automatically gives me back my return, right? So what does that look like? Well, if you throw tens of thousands of dollars into your child, you hope that your child can invest that forward into something else. And in that moment, that's when you get your potential. But this is potential we're talking about. We're not talking about payback. That is a whole different story. You know, we're going back to the whole innate thing and selfishness, and it's very required. If you're suffering, like if we're gonna go talk about the negative side of things, if you're suffering, right? If you're barely making by, you're having trouble coping, that's requires a level of thinking. That requires payback, you know, making sure you're selfish enough to sustain yourself, right? It's one cannot start generating positive happy dollars if you are already negative. That's like having a debt to yourself, right? So yes, I have seen bad faith before. However, much like the word faith, I like to think that this person with enough happy dollars and like mechanisms and whatnot, they can start making a net profit, right? A net profit. I think the source of negativity often precedes someone who is bad. That might be a very naive perspective, and I'm more than willing to live a life of accepting those consequences, of believing that people are not inherently bad because they choose to be bad, but they are inherently bad due to something that precedes them, that robs them of that potential to invest forward, right? There are you can name very extraneous circumstances, right? Very large outliers, but that's what the internet does well. I'm not here to justify or rationalize or try to vindicate the extreme situations. We're talking about like 90% of the human population, not like the 10%. Just it's great to see the extraordinary peoples in the most positive light, and also the extraordinarily terrible people in the worst of light. The internet does that in spades. I will not say and pretend like I don't know those examples, right? However, every once in a while, it's nice to talk about the other 90%, right? The middle ground people. So that's probably what I would say about that. This is nebulous. This is nebulous, a word I learned from a wise man, but is emphasizing with as many people, empathizing with as many people as possible your highest end goal in life? Yes. Empathizing because there's no shortage. Since I believe in an unattainable goal. So here's a fundamental of myself, I suppose. And language learning fits into this. So it is related to language learning. Unattainable goals. Much like in order for me to empathize with someone who believe you can master a language, which I don't believe, master a language, I believe that one of my goals is to try to master a language. Notice, I guess you probably say like, what do you mean by master language? You speak English, right? I didn't master it. It's an unattainable goal. And why are unattainable goals sufficient for me? I'm a selfish person. I really am a selfish person. I am very greedy. So I set myself up for unattainable goals so that it proceeds that I would focus on process-oriented goals. My goals the ultimate goals are the goals that are unattainable. There's no possible way in my conceivable mind that I would say that my life is filled with regrets if I don't reach these goals. They are inherently unattainable. So they keep me going, right? It's an endless, foreseeably endless task. However, you can set goalposts along the way. Adventure doesn't end until I stop breathing, right? So that would be one of them. I think ultimately though, I would say trying to empathize, largely because not all attempts are successful, right? Not all attempts are successful. So as provided that the default is I'm trying. If I stop trying, then that is something I must talk to myself about. Because when I stop trying, then something is really something's not working anymore, right? The moment I get up in the day, and I stop trying to empathize, then I have a problem. And that hasn't stopped yet. So, and you might be thinking, well, it will eventually stop working, right? Well, maybe. I don't rest on my laurels. I don't know if you're familiar with that idiom, Procol. Rest on laurels. Just because something is working doesn't mean I won't continue trying to experiment and make it work better. So that's what learning is. Or even more pedantic, learning about learning. So, for example, I use Duolingo not necessarily because it was the most efficacious, the easiest, not just because it was the most popular. It was advertised as the best. Lots of people use it. It has lots of languages. It has a silly bird. It's all of the above. The idea is it gives me the highest potential return on trying to empathize and experience what a lot of people are experiencing. Now you might be thinking, oh yeah, well that's just chasing popular things. It's like, yes, but not for the same purpose. It's not for a selfish purpose. I mean, like, I don't want to chase, like, using Duolingo doesn't give me a lot of clout. Like, I don't need any more clout. Some clout is always nice, you know? Like, Gecko gives me the privilege to talk to Gecko, Valentine, Mattia now, Procall, you, Blair. Like, it does give me some clout. Like, that gives me a positive happy dollars, along the way. However, I'm not here to get paid happy dollars. I'm here to give happy dollars. And to echo John Green's words, actually, John Green might be also referencing someone else, right? John Green is also referencing someone else. Or maybe themselves, possibly. I think this is a John Green quote. When generosity, I'm going to add some words because I don't remember the exact quote. When open generosity is reciprocated. Okay, I'm paraphrasing. Is reciprocated. Oh my gosh, I can't spell reciprocated. Reciprocated with open generosity. That's when true magic happens. That's when I'm going to add true magic happens. And I stream every day knowing that I can offer open generosity. And not to expect that it is reciprocated. But when it is, that is when true magic happens. That's the essence of the human condition. One essence of the human condition that I embrace wholeheartedly. So I don't expect this. but when it happens, that's when the truth. John Green was talking about like projects and stuff, like his work as an influencer or a content creator, as an author and stuff. Oftentimes, the best magic comes from he does things, he gives things to people, he writes things for people, and at one time when someone says, "Oh yeah, your book really speak to me. Can I give back? You know, like can we work together on something?" That is the magic that he's referring to. So he was really specifically referring to in the context of being a published author, right? And the impact that it had on his life and how he's so open generosity, right? When you write something, it's an act of open generosity. When you compose music, and I think that essence have kind of been lost in a lot of things, right? Because of monetization, right? Yes, there's innate obligation for sustainability. Your time is limited. You need to put food on the table, right? And whatnot, and be paid for your duties. However, on top of all of these things, forms of expression like writing, language, especially when you're choosing to do it, is a form of open generosity. Not, I could self-study without streaming. The streaming part is my anticipation of open generosity. It's a privilege I have. There's no way around it, right? I get to stream because I have the luxury of doing so. So you can take all of it. You don't have to pay for it. I have chosen this vocation as a way to demonstrate learning. You're back. You see the WaniKani review has not really, it didn't move once. Sorry, Gecko. But we're going to. You assume interesting conversations have been taking place. Yeah. We're doing our intermission basically at this point. Life is much more fulfilling when focusing on the journey than on the grim end destination we all share. Indeed, right? So say MAKU said so say Gecko. Yes, Gecko. Oh, so you went with that, huh? I thought you might have gone with something more exotic for your gecko. Like do like some sort of word pun on ge getsuko or something, like some like kanji that you can come up with. I love it when people try to get their name with like what is it called, ateji or something. I like when you should see what your what you get, Gecko. Do you think in the future we'll be able to exploit good habits to be as rewarding as bad habits, or do you think the nature of bad habits will always include a stronger pull to fall into those habits over good habits? Dang, that is such a loaded. Such a loaded question. But hear me out. I ask that stuff. I ask myself every day. I think so. If it here, I don't know if this is true. If inherently good habits, their exploitation of good habits supersedes the return on bad habits, if by default, right, somehow first come first serve, whatever permutations of habits, if that supersedes the nature of bad habits versus good habits, then yes. Now there's a philosophical question in there. When you start to exploit good habits over bad habits, are the good habits the new bad habits? Because most things are relative, right? So when you exploit something, does it turn a good habit into a bad habit? So that's kind of a relative thing that I often ask myself. Like for example, I'll give a real world example. Smoking. This is because I have a colleague, I have a best friend who works in this. Now, it used to be tobacco, right? That's a bad habit. However, there's also e-cigarettes, which presumably is a quote-unquote better habit if you're replacing them, if you're substituting them, right? But now this becomes a new bad when it gets normalized. So what's the new one? Not smoking. or maybe whatever replaces that. So the idea is there's often a constant push, at least in my opinion, inherently for the betterment of humanity, largely fueled by selfishness, which is great because then you can make an argument. I can kind of see that in the future, you know? However, at the same time, there's a staggering push backwards for everything that's new, right? So if something is introduced and it turns out to be a bad habit, possibly AI, like in some ways, exploitation in AI in some way, then it starts at a place. So it could go backwards sometimes. It can go forward sometimes. So ultimately, I think one human condition is survival, right? I like to think survival is a great human condition. So I would say better habits are in the future. Better habits will be exploited in the future until they are no longer conceived as better habits, but a lesser habit, and then better habits replace that, and so on and so forth. I like to believe that. That is probably what I would say. Obviously, I have no fortune telling or any of that nature. The burden of reciprocating nice action should always be on the receiver. I don't think it can be defined as a nice action if the giver has an expectation of reciprocate. Yeah, exactly. It's very difficult. Yeah, definitely. Okay. So now we're definitely gonna go into our lesson now. I did start an hour earlier for this reason today. Managed to get more. I haven't gone around to that yet, but now I think I must though. Sounds fun. I'll keep you posted. Oh, ateji. Isn't that what that's called? I'm not sure if that's what that's called. Someone dropped this word over and over again. And I'm not even sure if this is a Japanese word because it kind of sounds multiple languages could actually have this. But I think this is what it was called, where you try to get the nearest thing but with kanji as opposed to using kana. I thought about it too, and I haven't decided yet if I could what kind of characters and what kind of meaning that I could get away with for ma and ku for the two reads. I don't have enough mas, so I have no idea. But ku? There's quite a few kus in it. You think yes? Okay. Oh, that's how it's written. Oh. I see. And then D, oh, that makes sense. Character. Oh. Got it. Anyways, yeah, there you have it. Thanks for the awesome question though. And then Blair has seaweed snacks, so that's not fair. I would trade some happy dollars for some seaweed snack. And I don't have enough ge, but you'll look into it. Yeah, I don't think I have enough ma. Besides like ma. That doesn't serve my purpose. Ku has a lot. Maybe you could even get away with ku, right? Ku, like an extended, or like ma, like try to extend it or something to find another thing that's similar to it. Thai sweet chili seaweed. Okay, now I'm a little jealous. What are you trying to do? End this stream, Blair, so I can go out and go buy some seaweed snacks? All right. Thank you guys for providing some talking topics. I brought a short story today, which some of it was that, so it was from yesterday, so that's not too bad. I also bought like a YouTube short story as well, and now I promptly forgot it. I was gonna weave it in, I think the YouTube short story had something to do with... Yeah, it's gone. Maybe another time. I used to work on one really good, you know, a longer story because people are very shy on the internet. So whenever someone asks a question, I try to like segue into it. And then nowadays I have like 2 or 3 shorter things and they might come in or not. Yeah. No, just a suggestion for later. Yeah, seaweed snacks. Ooh, seaweed snacks. Okay. Get back. This is the Han Solo story here. Please kindly ask Blair to stop flexing tasty snacks. do you have... Are you into seaweed snacks, Gecko? What is it like? What is the take on seaweed snacks in Belgium? Next time you'll just send pictures to Discord. Oh yeah, that'll be sufficient. Are you telling me you inhaled them so fast you can't even take a picture of them anymore? Gee, I would too. I would totally be guilty. It's like, oh yeah, I had these excellent seaweed snacks. I can't really show you because they're already in my belly. Oh, you have a second package? Oh, alright. Well, you know what that means. Ne? Kakeru. Sorry, I'm thinking of something else when I'm doing this. Like I'm trying to refrain from adding more to what we were just talking about. Okay. Oh, wait. I have a... I don't know if it's apparent that I have a grin on my face. Oh, I keep typing Ming. That's not Ming. Sorry, it is very hard for me to not think about something right now. Errors are going to happen soon. All in all, you don't think there's an official take on seaweed snacks in Belgium? It's pretty hard to find here. Oh, personally, you like them? Just okay, I see. But you actually like the idea of tasting exotic snacks more than eating in itself in the case of seaweed snacks, if that makes sense. Yes, I do. What about Kit Kats? Have you had a matcha Kit Kat yet? That's kind of like the litmus test for how let's just say how reductively Asian your current situation is. Yeah. matcha Kit Kat. Yeah, that got it. I love the earthy tones and next to sweetness and whatnot. Kind of like a dry boba tea, but you kind of want it refreshing, but it's a chocolate thing, so maybe I don't think I've ever had a boba tea. You know, it pretty much is a boba tea if you were to make it refreshing. The Kit Kat refreshing, probably more or less a boba tea. Uh where am I going with this? I was gonna go with yeah. Ugh. Oh, Jean. Oh, right. Oh, I'm looking for onyomi. Whoops. The onyomi for the life. Matcha smoothie with wafer. Yeah, you know, even have like a wafer, like you know, like those ornaments. Like you have things in the drink, so you're just like dipping the wafer into the matcha smoothie. You're talking about the chocolate candy bar, right? Yeah. If yes, I think I might have tried it once. I didn't find it particularly memorable, neither positively nor negatively. All right. Are have you had matcha in like any form? How often have you where I'm bringing up matcha because it's arguably distinctively Japanese. The very specific matcha that um are heavily trending is specifically Japanese actually. Obviously there are other forms of green tea related things, but not particularly that heavily neat like green substance. uh, a green substance. Okay. Whoops. Oh yeah, and matcha poke. Yeah. Or Paki. Actually, I don't really know if what is it in Japanese? Oh, Pokiri. Oh, I see. Pokiri. Interesting. Yeah. Hockey sticks. Pokiri. I haven't even thought about that yet. Like what do they what how do they pronounce it in Japanese? If you're talking about the tea now, yes, you've had it. Your wife is a big tea fan, so there's plenty in the house of all sorts. I admit I'm more of a coffee guy. Disowned. Shame on you. Shame for shame. No, actually, I don't know what the Japanese coffee scene is like. You West. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I actually don't drink coffee or tea on a regular, so sorry. Uh, Mizu. You know, Mizu only. I was gonna say a solamente. Solamente Mizu. I'm like, where am I going with this? Does it make you unworthy of learning about Asian culture? Nah. Uh, my parents drink coffee too. Although they're Chinese. Cafe is that's a good question actually. I'm not sure what it's like in mainland China anymore. Is it coffee or tea? Cafe is really like night though. Milk tea is that's my childhood. Like when my parents it's kind of funny now that I think about it. Like my parents gave me milk tea, something caffeinated before soda. We would go to the bakery, you know, grab an egg tart, and it would be Naita. right? Before boba tea was a thing, so Naita would be the thing. Purist Mizu, purist. I do have to admit, if I had a device, I'm looking for a device. I promise, I'm looking for a device that helps me suspend and mix without generating more dishes with honey and water, because I do need something to lubricate the throat, if you know what I mean. I need some lubrication. And water doesn't really cut it all the time. Coffee and tea kind of like dries up my throat. So that's probably the only reason, or one of the bigger reasons why I don't drink coffee and tea while I'm streaming. Um, other than that, I wouldn't mind like sipping on some honey s thing, something to lubricate. I mean, you literally just like lemon honey tea, but tea is still gonna dehydrate. Yeah, yeah, the that's one of the major reasons. I drink and I social drink coffee whenever, like coffee or tea or even libations in a social environment. However, functionally, unfortunately, my throat dries out a lot. To be honest, when it comes to Asian cuisine, you're all about the savory dish, be it Indian, Thai, Chinese, or Japanese, etc. Interesting. Savory dishes, you say. But they have to be also lava, right? It's got to be like lava and savory and salty. Salty, savory, and lava. With a side of lava. No, sometimes you want salty and savory with your lava. You know? Don't they make honeysuckers? They do. However, like it would sound kind of weird with me with something like I did try it a couple of times. I actually used to chew gum too. Like chew like kind of mentholish gum, right? Something that not like menthol so it can end up drying over time, but I used to like chew something to keep my salivary glands active. Lava like overcooked or super spicy? Overcooked. Honestly, I haven't even thought about that. Lava as an overcooked. No, super spicy, you know. You got to do the little I was gonna draw something. Here, let me quickly draw a visual. Like, if your food doesn't look like it's not like bubbling like this, you know, right? And then it has like red. Just imagine that these are red pools, and like pooling spice chili oil, you know, right on top, right? Lava. You need lava, right? Lava with a side of salty and savory. I should have changed the color of my pen, but you know. I'm kidding. Of course, I'm kidding. Uh, eat with care. You know, eat responsibly. Indigestion's no joke. If the food's not a savory puddle on the plate, send it back. It's not done. You say you like spicy more than the average Western European. In Asian restaurants here, you enjoy the dishes advertised as the spiciest. Ah, I still think it's not representative of the food eaten there. It's usually the case. And obviously, I was joking. Sometimes, if you like the spiciest, hitting spicier it may not actually, you know, diminish return, right? I know there's a bit of pride or some weird flex in it, but when I say lava, it's more like the spiciest you have without diminished return, right? What are the diminished return? Feeling like you have to go to the bathroom, but there's nothing there. That's when you ate too spicy. And you might be thinking, why did you describe it like that? It's because it's happened to me several times in my life, and I don't think that's a good that's a point of no return. There's consuming so much spice that you feel like you have to go to the bathroom, but you have nothing in your system anymore. Like that was probably, it's happened like 3 or 4 times in my life when I was a lot younger, when I was a little foolish, and that stuff feels like it. What is another descriptor of that? This one's a little bit more painful, but it's like having drinking too much and then you're dry heaving. It feels a little bit more awkward though when you go the other way around. It feels like your stomach, your intestine is constantly churning, and it's like, whoa, like there's nothing there, chief, but it's just churning. It's like, dude, I can't get this out of my system. That's kind of like dry heaving when you had too much alcohol poisoning. Hey, I don't know how I feel about this particular conversation, but let's just say I have also been there a couple of times. I have experienced that part of my life. However conservative I am when it comes to, talking about making decision making and whatnot, youth has its ways, and I have been there enough times to remind me that it's okay. I don't have to experience that again. Yeah. Lava, the most comfortable spice. Oh, I could use some Bjorni right about now. Oh, spicy Bjorni is so good. That basmati rice is so PogChamp. Red panda drawing? Wait, what happened? Oh, for the spice? I've been thinking about drawing some stuff off time. So there's so many things on the back burner when it comes to drawing red pandas. Okay. What are we doing here? Cut hand. Oh. Oh yeah, right. Cut hand. Isn't it weird? Oh, it's probably just stamped. Isn't it weird? Has anyone had this yet? Where I did not know the meaning of that word until I actually said the word in my head. Like, it's like I don't know what that word is. And I'm like, well, what does that word read like? And then the moment I said kite to myself, it's like, oh, I know what that is. My reading comprehension is really, it's not the greatest. I'm gonna have to be real. It's often due speech, so I have a slight preference for speech. So oftentimes it's like 70-30%. So if I can't read this, if I know what it sounds like, I know what it means. Playing with designs, and somehow you've made what is turning into a red panda. Ooh, interesting. I look forward to seeing what that is later down the road. Yep. Oops. You do find yourself enjoying a steady supply of lava flows while on vacation, but you're aware that doesn't count in the same category. Wait, Have you seen a lava flow? I haven't like witnessed a lava flow before. Not that type of lava flow. If you're talking about the physical lava flow. Like the geological lava flow. Mm. Oops. Typo. Ah! What's happening? Oh. My finger was offset by 1. That moment in typing. Oh, you know what? I'm actually kind of curious, guys. Do you guys type normally? And when I mean normally, I mean the statistical average of the QWERTY keyboard. Nowadays, this is a super interesting topic. We won't talk about it too much, but recently there have been some interesting meta-analyses about how the new generation of kids process typing versus like Gen Zs versus millennials. And Gen Z is in a transitional standpoint, like a significant proportion of Gen Zs actually don't associate typing, still the statistical average, but form of typing. Like it's actually incredibly humbling or sobering to ask this question, and you might be fairly surprised at how often people don't associate typing with actual QWERTY keyboards anymore. You haven't either? You witnessed the geological one? I think you like to if you got the chance, although I feel I would be somewhat anxious no matter how reasonably far away I would be. That's my first thought. I'm like, do I really want to be next to an active volcano? I know whale watching is also a thing, right? I thought, one day I might go whale watching, one of those things. But then I thought, thalassophobia is so strong after Subnautica or something. But thinking about being on an open water and there's like this massive, I know whales are incredibly majestic. They're incredible marvels of the natural world when it comes to organisms. But the idea of something larger than probably the boat you're on just swimming around like underneath, I don't know. There are things that I want to witness in life. It's like, if you think about it picturesque, you're like, oh yeah, that would be cool. Like going to the Amazon rainforest, and then immediately you're thinking, if I go to the Amazon rainforest, what would I see there? Well, first, there are a lot of things that can make your day not so great. So it's one of those things. Your luck, you end up meeting a shark on a boat in the ocean. Yeah, so that stuff do go on in my mind as especially when I've gotten older and older, as opposed to back in the day. Like back in the day when I was 20, I jumped off a canyon. And I was like, yeah, let's jump off a canyon. Don't get me wrong. I have vertigo. I have trouble just walking at high places because my body starts leaning. But at the same time, it still didn't stop me from jumping off a canyon. So nowadays I'm like looking at, oh, that would be so cool. Ooh, there's like aided trampoline stuff. Let's, oh, you can have a one time in a life experience with like, what do you call those? Trapezes, right? The trapeze or something, those things that we hang and you're like guided with it. And my only thought was, with any luck, I'm gonna smash into something somehow. Like something terrible is gonna happen. And this is coming from someone that used to run obstacle course runs once a year. And those obstacles, some of them are like 3 times my height, and the only thing supporting it is you hugging onto a thin you know, like a arguably thin wall that you're climbing over, and then the other end is just a mud pile. So falling down, injuring yourself, there's so many things that I've done where my intrusive thoughts is like, what if I flipped over? I'm like, well, that's a broken back. You would love to go to the Amazon for the fish, but the spiders make it no for husband. Oh yeah, yeah, man. You can always go to the Florida Everglades, Blair. It's close by. I watched this one guy ends up on my algorithm every once in a while. He's the guy that like walks around barefoot and yoinking things in places. That guy actually visited the Amazon rainforest as well, where he just like yoinks everything. I just think, wow, so fearless. But it was interesting to see all the different animals, at least through the lens. Like, through the lens. You've been to Florida? Key West is beautiful. Haven't been to Key West. Florida happened once before. Miami and Fort Lauderdale was as far as we went. It was like a 2-day trip. Or yeah, it was a 2-day trip. A weekend. Okay. Are we coing this? We're not coing this. Wait. Oh, I'm thinking of old. What was the mnemonic for this? Oh. Oh. Right. The 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 fresh and live thing. Yes. All right. All right. All right. All right. Shh. Shh. We got this. We got this. While in Italy last fall, you did get to witness a small eruption from up close. Ooh, no lava. It was just a large puff of dark smoke. It was not much, a pretty minor event all in all, but still pretty cool. I think when it comes to like puff of smoke and stuff, I don't know if this is still a thing. Probably still is. But in the United States, there's a Yellowstone National Park. And I totally forgot what state that's in. Sorry, Yellowstone. But there's geysers. So when I think of like eruptions with like puff of smoke or puff of something that deals with a gaseous form, I think of a geyser. And there is Yellowstone. I haven't ever been to Yellowstone either. I don't know how they plan those things. Like, do you just go there with a predicted like a I forgot what those people do, but the people who study geysers and volcanoes and whatnot, I'm not even sure if it's the same field, but they like anticipate when the phenomenon will occur, or do they trigger the phenomenon or something? But I often think of like Yellowstone National Park when it comes to like geyser. What was it called, like Old Bertha or something? They gave it a name. I haven't witnessed those. In New Zealand, my trip, like studying abroad to New Zealand, I did see a lot of natural wonders though. Like literally been on an iceberg. It's a really weird iceberg. Like it's an iceberg in the middle, like it's wedged in land or something. So we climbed around an iceberg. Sulfur, lots of like sulfur vent things, like sulfur pools and whatnot. And then what is it? Rotonoa? Hang on. It's a place called Rotorua. Rotorua is a place that's built on volcanic land. And when you go there, the whole ground feels like it's warmer. Like, and it smells like sulfur all over the place. Like the whole you get used to it, but the moment you go in, it's like as you get closer to Rotorua, you immediately start getting wafts of the rotten egg smell, right? The sulfur. And then eventually you adapt to it, and everything, the entire ground is like warmed. Like it's a different temperature on the ground. So it's on like active surface. And managed to go into a spring, right? Like not necessarily onsen, right? It's New Zealand is westernized in a way, so have been in a geological spring before, but the geological spring is because the whole place is on active ground. So that was interesting. That's probably the closest thing I have to volcanic elements in my lifetime. You know, Rotorua was quite an interesting place. I still remember there was one time it started raining, but since it was kind of really warm in New Zealand, it was hard to differentiate if you're wet or you're not wet, because it was so wet you're not wet kind of feeling. So it's like kept raining. We were climbing this rock thing with like only it was a silly thing to do, but we were climbing this formation in like slippers in the storm. There's a picture of it too at the top. And then we came back down and we just like hopped into some hot springs, but it was already raining outside, so it was kind of weird. Like you went from a semi-cold but still warm wet state into a warm state. It was a weird day. Those were some weird days. We were out and about, and we took a bus there, so we go bus there. So we just walked around. So we were like at one time on the beach. It was on the same day. All of this was on the same day. We revisited Raglan, the popular surfing beach. There was body surfing and whatnot involved. I didn't know how to surf, and it's suddenly on that same day, huge storms, climbing this really slippery unpathed rock formation while still wet and storming, and then coming down and stepping into a hot spring place, but it was raining. Wow, New Zealand had some times. There are some US national parks that I would absolutely love to visit. I think there's so much to see in the US in terms of scenery and nature, etc. I agree, and I haven't seen most of them as well. I don't think I've seen what is the biggest geographical feature that I visited in the United States? The closest one that I cross all the time is the Appalachian Mountains, but that doesn't count. Maybe like the San Diego coastline. That's very iconic if you pull up pictures of that. Geographical. I'm trying to think of like geographical things, like geological related things, and then you have cities and whatnot. But yeah, so little in my 37 years of life. My modest 37 years of life. And if you sit me in front of a scenic view, I can usually watch for hours without getting bored. Yeah. I'm the guy that would sit there, but you also bring like tailgating food or just food in general. So bring like a makeshift seating area and just sit there, right? Here's a particular scenery, right? I like drawing scenery. So imagine this, right? mound. I'm trying to woo gecko or something. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So, you know, have a really sprawling tree, right? Then you have in the background, but then you have a cityscape down here, right? Then you possibly have an ocean down here on this side, right? And you have you have like a picnic towel, picnic, some food, right? And it's just chilling right here. Maybe with a cool looking hat, right? Big smirk, right? Just chilling. Maybe you'll walk over here and look at the mountain. Let's put a sun here. Gigantic sun. Fill in the city a little. You know? There we go. Sit there, chill. Food. Okay. I'm gonna stick with door. Yeah. Okay, I thought I had this, but then I don't. What was the mnemonic for this? Oh, right. Ah! I meant to type umbrella. I was thinking, wait, isn't this the thing that deals with the hand? Oh no, it might not even be umbrella. Wait, is it umbrella? Yeah, it is. Okay. I don't want to talk about it. I'm still thinking about the scenery. Oh, I shouldn't miss those things. Yeah, we shouldn't miss those things. Those things can slow things down. So we should really get those. Don't be too laxed. Gotta be more vigilant. Oops. Ah! Oh, that's stone. Whoops. Oh, Seki. Oh no, I shouldn't miss that one either. Dang it. Oh, wait. Does it? No. Radicals are the things I should not miss because then they unlock kanji, right? And I need enough kanji. But if I miss a few kanji, that's irrelevant until we unlock the kanji. I know this is sounding like it's planning efficiency, but that's just how the system ended up turning out. So. That one is problematic. I shouldn't have missed that, but that city looks heavily. In terms of pure city and excluding cities, my favorite memory is the west coast of Ireland. Where's Cozy when you need Cozy to chime in? You spent your honeymoon there 10 years ago and still remember it vividly? I can only imagine. It's interesting. Great majority of the people that live here, where I live, when they get married, their honeymoon tends to deal with Ireland. Probably also because of the special occasion, but still, it was breathtaking. Yeah. Not coincidentally, I think 2 or 3 people specifically chose Ireland as a honeymoon that I've had personal encounters, relations with. Interestingly enough, maybe there's a thing there too. Maybe peeps that I know or hang around just happens to like Ireland as well. Obviously, this is conspiracy theory. This is confirmation bias, right? I'm telling you things that are deliberately related. To contextualize other people, there are more people who didn't go to Ireland that I'm aware of. I am part of a lot of weddings. Oftentimes I get included into a lot of weddings. So, but there happens to be 3 different instances. Ireland happens to be the choice of honeymoon destinations. Blame it on the leprechauns. They be scheming. Listen, have you ever watched a depiction of leprechauns? Like, both the like supernatural and the like the I guess you would qualify them as horror stuff. I have mixed feelings about leprechauns. Like through the exposure of entertainment. And maybe like really old folklore. uh Whoops. Oops. Uh okay. It can indeed be cute or pretty creepy or even scary in some representations. You are still able to sleep at night in Ireland though, even when surrounded by That gives me a prompt idea. Like a more like the good, the bad, the ugly, but also chilling around on the bed. So you have like I could see a pretty fun art prompt. um this isn't. Oh, it's both of them actually. Okay. And 15, that's from yesterday. We had some time. We had some good discussions. Finish these two. Oops. There's something about Ireland that I really can't describe. I find it somewhat magical, for lack of a better term. It's a place you've been where you could most easily imagine fairies actually living, mostly talking about the countryside, of course. Yeah, I see what you mean. I, I I can see what you mean. Obviously, being there is most definitely something that must be experienced in person. The closest like island-ish thing is still New Zealand, but those are not the same. Yeah, you don't get the fairy feeling like the westernized fantasy like. Okay, there are some moments because of Lord of the Rings. So there are places in the South Island that gets you that mythical, like dwarven feel, but that might be also perpetuated by the Lord of the Rings. So there is this whole Tolkien fantasy thing going on. That's probably the closest thing. And it's also the only time I've been outside of the continental North America, so not too many experiences to use to leverage here. It's time to invest in that VR headset, Gecko. Kidding, of course. It's not a substitute. Although it also presents itself as a unique experience. The whole idea of VR these days. I haven't ever forayed into VR outside of the, the virtual boy days when they like those red line vectors burn holes into your eyeballs. The closest thing I've experienced. Okay, sometimes maybe rides. There were rides that were sort of like that, but New Frontier. All right, there we go. Yeah, so I kind of goofed, right? Oh, I goofed. Oh, wow. I goofed twice? Wait, did I really goof twice? I could have sworn I goofed once. Oh, no, wait. Yeah, it takes away instead of adding one. Yeah, no, that works out. Yeah, it's actually double. Oh, yeah, because it doesn't stay in the same position. And then this was Seki. I did this yesterday. These two were from yesterday. Okay. To be honest, New Zealand would be a very high on the travel to-do list if it just wasn't so far from here. In the case of New Zealand, it's really the practical constraints holding you back. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Does that also include like Australia? I think Fiji is nearby as well, right? Yeah. During our semester, some of my classmates traveled either to Australia. Someone I knew a little bit closer traveled to Fiji instead. Not sure if anyone traveled as far as like even further north during our abroad time. All right, so let's go over this stuff. What time is it? What's our time look like? 8:43. Okay. All right, let's do our harmonics. Ehomonics. Okay. Man, measurement, origin, whole, leader, forehead, alligator, ceremony, spirit, branch, energy, center, world, plate, bamboo, thread, ear, insect, flowers, sea, red, bar, shellfish, foot, knot, samurai, rice, loiter, bed, eye, cliff, master, umbrella, beggar, horns, spikes. Okay. Now we're gonna write out the reads, right? Should we write out the reads? Nah, let's not write out the reads. It's okay. Okay. So, do I need to go over the mnemonics? Maybe for the ones that I missed, right? So, yeah, we'll do the ones that I missed for the mnemonics. So, okay. So, That would certainly include Australia, some Pacific islands like Fiji, New Caledonia, and French Polynesia. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. This is Lil Kyoto, and being little Ko. Actually, I don't know. Those are own. I don't quite know. Zhuo? Qu. Oh, okay. Yeah. Kyo. Yes. So, Kyo and Ko. Kyo, Ko. Go. Da. Kori. Kori. Oh. Sen. Now, what the heck was Sen's mnemonic? I mean, don't really need it, but Sen. I know the sliding. Oh, centaur. Oh my gosh, this centaur wasn't working. It's fine. Centaur is not working. It's fine. And this was the evening mouth, right? May Nendroids. Nen. Oh, I didn't write this one out. This one was oh wait, this is mole. Did I say mole? I'm not sure if I said mole. Oh, right. I wrote K because it's not the same mole for whatever reason. So the mo is the keyword. Mo and mole. Okay. So yaku, whoops. Yaku. Go. I feel like you really need to spend a fair bit of time on a trip like that to justify the travel time and cost need to get there, but it's not easy to arrange with work and school. That's understandable. It's time for an early retirement, Gecko. Happen on some, what do they say? A windfall? Is that what people say? Like happen upon a glorious windfall in asset windfalls, and then it's time. Wishful thinking, I know. Oh, in Seki. Seki. Hey. So Seki was the, oh yeah, I didn't write. So Seki was sexy was the keyword for Seki. I don't want to talk about it. And then the treasure one was home. Home was the trigger word. Oh. You've been considering trans-Pacific cruises too. Oh, that's a fair point. Going from Australia to the US West Coast, which stops typically in New Zealand and Hawaii. That's an option. Indeed. Still needs a long vacation, but the idea appeals to you. Yeah. I think I have a family member that's assigned to do an Arctic cruise for that, for a similar reason, to tackle the like Scandinavia um and I guess they stop at Iceland or something. I'm not even sure if they what else, but the Arctic Circle. Okay, and then let's go over the definitions, right? These ones are getting a little bit questionable in wording, so I need to reinforce. We're gonna use I think all three can be used, right? Past, previous. Oh, no, just pass. Oh, they only have pass. I'm surprised I've typed pass all 3 times as opposed to saying previous and stuff. Okay, past. We're gonna have to ingrain that. Pass. Number. Strike. Ice. Say humbly. Previous. I think that's why I said previous for this most of the time. Name. Say my name. Say my name. No, 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 no. That's such an old song. Year. Man, Sunflower is so overpowering this from Hanzahiro. Early. 100. Specifically 100, not 100. Pound. Treasure. Stone. You're always torn between the idea of saving for possibly earlier or easier retirement and the idea that any day could be the last and I don't want to go with a pile of money in the bank and no dreams achieved. Yeah, that is definitely one to juggle, right? I thought about it too. And then being in the state of mind I'm in now, I think about the opposite human condition, you know. When you get into a state, then you start thinking about others and thinking about other things. Interestingly enough. I wonder what I haven't thought about retirement. Like what I mean is the concept of retirement when it comes to asking other people what their concept of retirement is. Certainly I have worked in my life, like labor and service worked in my life. However, that's so far removed from my academic life. And the idea I think about is that retirement is like, imagine retiring from thinking and retiring from learning. I can kind of see the appeal, but I think I echo quite a lot of much younger people that I would go stir crazy after a while. I mean, hence my current situationship. I heard this said once. I really love it. I don't think that's an English word, but I like the situationship. Is that an English word? Let's see. It is an English word, a situationship. But it's used inappropriately. So we're talking about like that type of situationship. And you know, so I started thinking about that too. Like, do you retire from that too? Obviously I'm sure you have a different perspective being a parent, right? And having a lovely partner and a child. Okay, so let's go over the errors we made. So Seki was just not paying attention, and I wrote the natural thing. I wrote Hidari instead of Seki, of course. So Seki, what was our sexy? Sexy was our trigger word, right? This one was more of a happenstance due to wandering thoughts. So we can't have that happen. Also, this, we can't afford to do umbrella as well. And I wrote spoon for a different reason, but umbrella, right? There's no comment on this. It's the very bare fundamentals. And then we had Nama again, right? In this case, Nama and and Onyomi. What did I type for Onyomi? Oh, I just typed the wrong thing completely. Right? Yes. Say, jeans and what was it? Jeans and a saber is all you need in life. That was a mnemonic. Yeah, so these are the special cases. So this is Namaste was supposed to be the keyword. We have like sushi and sashimi. And then we have jinsei. Jinsei. And the keywords were jeans and saber. Jinsei. You know, many people who never retire from thinking and learning, when retired or even usually get into only at that point, you associate retirement with the idea of not needing to have a job to pay the bills. I can get behind that. Yeah. That is probably how I would bare minimum, like that's the sufficient to qualify for retirement, right? That is one of the mandatory criterias, as you will. I agree with that. Maybe even closer to, maybe even more closer is the lack of need of an active bill or active income. The lack of requirements for an active income. So if there are no innate or intrinsic obligation to maintain an active income, passive income comes with retirement usually. So not, instead of talking about bills and insurance and family expenses, retirement deals without the incentive of needing an active income to cover like all of the above. No requirements for an active income. You mean you like your job all right? Really can't complain about it overall, but I know this is not what brings me fulfillment in life. Yeah, that's understandable. And I feel in a retirement state, the reason why I mentioned the intellectual and learning side is I can't see myself retiring from what I liked about my job or my career, which is teach people. So I won't stop teaching people. However, I don't have to be paid for it, right? There's no aggression for happy dollars. I actually think I can frame this all in happy dollars. Retirement is when you have sufficient happy dollars that you're no longer required to need a source of active income to regenerate your happy dollars. You stacked up so much happy dollars that now it's just burning a hole in your pocket, so you're there to spread the wealth, right? The figurative wealth. I think that goes back to I think you said something about you don't want to go with a pile of money in the bank and no dreams achieved. I feel like I'm in a perpetual state of that. With like the literal money. This might be me because I'm at a different stage in my life, maybe, or I've maybe leapfrogged a different stage in life. I think the whole like potential reservations about not having the opportunity to spend that money has gone beyond the literal stack of money, and what I tend to see is the missed opportunity of using that money to generate more happy dollars. So investment comes as, how do I spend my time? Maximize happy dollar potential. and some people might be I think a perfectly reasonable counter argument to me is like, if you want to maximize your happy dollars, don't you want to like trend chase and then touch millions of people's hearts and stuff? It's like, well, like from a qualitative standpoint, yes, you could say 10,000 people is more than one person, but from a quantitative situation, the quantity that you invest in one person can be equivalent to the quantity you invest in 10,000 people. So my idea is, as long as I'm throwing out my happy dollars for the day as much as I can, I feel fulfilled in life. I think Prokal said something about is empathizing with the most amount of people in the world before I die is an ultimate life goal. It's like I really do stand behind that. I don't think my life is fulfilled if I'm not trying my best to vicariously connect with people. I think people is what immortalizes one's impression in life, and it's incredibly fulfilling to even touch one person's heart or do all the different things without the boundaries, of course, without the bounds of paying the bills and not finding fulfillment. Like it ends to a means to an end, right? A lot of times jobs is not something of personal passion, so it doesn't significantly contribute to the fulfillment of life. And then for those who are lucky, of course, we have to make mention where that job is one that also provides fulfillment in life. That's a very honest share when you said it might not necessarily, you know. I mean, okay. I'm not quite at that age yet where you dwell on that, but as a dad, I also get to think about what I want to leave behind, both financially and otherwise. Yeah, exactly. I would totally also be more, hear me out. I would totally straight up come out of retirement if the obligation suits it. And what I mean by retirement is I'm using a figurative language. Like, technically, I'm not working a job with an active income, so I would fulfill the requirements of retirement at the moment. But I see retirement as not necessarily a one-way street. If the opportunity presents itself, I would totally start working again because it brings my life fulfillment to support someone. And then see them grow up to support other people, right? It's interesting. I've been asked about retirement for some time. I think the most reasonable way to tell people or like to truncate the explanation is I'm on a permanent leave of absence or indefinite leave of absence at the moment. Sounds like a very good noble life. I hope so. Give happy dollars. Well, it's already 3 a.m. here. Yeah. Get some rest. Thanks for chilling. Thanks for hanging out. Yeah, I was this is the end, right, of the WaniKani session. So then we're gonna spend the next 3 hours into overdrive. Yeah, thanks for the conversation. And hopefully Sakamoto Day, you're enjoying Sakamoto, because I'm waiting for the season to conclude. I'm totally smashing that play button. So we'll have to talk about it another day. That is a very topical situation about growing old and going through different phases of your life as well. So good night, Gecko. Oyasumi nasai, Gecko-san. All right, folks, that's a wrap for today. We did a little bit of talking. I should really iron out my euphemisms that I use for my explainers. I really like the conversation today about the interplay between innate and learned opportunities, right? Learned obligations. I haven't thought of it that way. I actually think when Procol was talking about learned opportunities and innate opportunities, I like that terminology. Obligations, learned and innate obligations. I think that's a great way to spin on combining it with the consequences of the sources of addiction and the sources of habit formation. The somewhat like nebulous way of compartmentalizing or categorizing what is considered innate and what is learned. I think a vast majority of, and this is coming from privilege, right? We're talking about people who have privileges. They're not scrapped for overwhelmed by innate obligations. But the idea is being able to squeeze out and have opportunities to acquire new learned obligations can go a long way, in my opinion, a significant way. Now, mileage may vary, of course, but a significant way of improving someone's overall proactive mindset. And oftentimes with learned obligations, it offers at least somewhat of a choice and flexibility in slightly elevating the possibility while being drowned in so many innate obligations. It does. I know life is not fair, right? It's a realistic take. Life is not fair. Everyone is not born with the same privileges and accessibility. However, I want to lightly encourage the idea that situations do not improve or are less likely to improve when semblance of control and surrender is given. And oftentimes innate obligations can do that. They can bury you so deep that one can convince oneself that there is no other way to look at it, right? And an uplift of spirit can come from an external source, for sure. Like someone comes along, tells you, I can help, right? Let me know, even 1% is more than 0. So if someone says, yeah, I have some time, right? I know pride is a thing. I would know for that for sure, where like the refusal of help and whatnot, or the whole compromise of telling yourself you can cope with it. But the difference, in my opinion, one of the highlights I want to say is, if you're saying you can handle it and deal with it, the thing I was talking about learned obligations and like things you choose voluntarily, I'm talking about how you gain from it, not dealing with it. So the whole like digression started with Procol suggesting, what happens if someone engaged me in bad faith? The idea is, not only would I say on most occasions I know how to deal with it, I'm not there to deal with it. I'm there to change it or try to try to change it. I'm not saying I would succeed in doing so, but I wouldn't stop with dealing with it. So when I start a stream, I expect to try to change things, refine things, be proactive about things. Largely because I tend not to sit there, not that other people do. I hope I don't upset anyone. I like the idea when people sit there and they feel like they're out of control, like they have things that are not in control. They're swarmed with every day. You're just coping, right? You're getting by. That something, someone, some source, even yourself, including yourself, could be like 1% of it is like, nah, I can change this. I can change this little by little. So being proactive is what I'm alluding to. Lean towards being proactive. It sucks when you spend the vast majority, and it will continue to, only be as good as 0 if most of the time you're coping. You're only coping to maintain 0, right? And unfortunately, biologically, and time, when delta T is factored in, it tends to descend, right? Without proactive thought, eventually, biologically, and somewhat, it continues to descend. The downward force continues to increase as time gets past. Without being proactive, you're not, individuals don't consistently add an upward force, right? To pass 0. And the state that I was in, or the state that I am in when I stream, is like I'm way in the positive before I start, right? I'm not here to stream because I'm in a deficit and streaming brings me up to normal. It's actually not my comfort zone. My comfort zone would be to hoard all my happy dollars and not share it. That would be a comfort zone choice, right? If you're thinking about it from a monetary, selfish manner, hoarding your resources and using these resources directed towards the self is probably the most sufficient, efficient, and pragmatic way of doing things. Not so much myself, right? Not so much myself. It's probably, in a weird way, I'm sure psychologists will have some comments about this. I haven't ever met with a professional psychologist, not since I was a kid, for other reasons. This could be a compensation. I could argue, I would concede that this could be a compensation to fill a void in my life. One could see it as a propensity that I do not have any other sources to invest, right? Again, as full transparency, I am alone, right? I do not have a child. I do not have another significant other. So having excess happy dollars, I want to make use of it, right? I want to make use of this. And that's where we ended today with Gecko and reflecting on the idea of retirement, or knowing when to use the resources you have accumulated and know how much you want to leave behind, right? And that's probably why my mindset is a little different towards like learning and teaching. Probably because there isn't anything that, quote unquote, there isn't anything innate that demands my attention at the moment. My family is here. Whenever my father and mother have something pertinent or problematic, I'm available. I'm always available. I make myself available, right? Whenever my friends have problems, I like to think they believe I'm available. So my response don't ever change when it comes to like, hey, do you want to do something? It's like, yeah, you know me, I'm always available. I'm in place, right? Sometimes previous talks about like, oh, what happens with your friends dynamic and stuff. So I just say yes, right? That's the idea of being in surplus. Maybe not the same the other way around, because some of my friends are married, right? And whatnot. Anyways, that's what I want to leave at. Curious where everyone else is, but generally speaking, yeah, I come on stream to invest forward. Invest forward as always, or at least try to invest forward always. That's the end of our WaniKani session. Thank you for listening. Thank you for chilling. If you're gonna watch this later, arigatou gozaimasu, right? For now, we're gonna switch gears. I'm gonna get up, stretch a little bit, hydrate. Hello there. Hey, what's the scribbling tool I use? It's a tool called I'm on the Chrome browser, and the tool is called Web Paint Tool. 3 words. And it's for the Chrome browser. I have been told by other people who use other browser it's compatible, or there is a compatible tool. All right. So I'm gonna walk away for a little bit, stretch and whatnot, and I'll be back for Hansa Hero. So until then, minasan, mata ne, ja ne, right? Be right back. Thank you, thank you. No problems, ne.